Thanks for joining this session. My name is Max. I'm a trans activist based in Cologne. I'm also a diversity consultant and currently in my final of my PhD in public health. And I thought today I would like to share a little bit about my personal story with you, because where I am today, success that I or like successfully achieving what I have achieved today, is something that I didn't believe in myself for many years. And I would like to invite you, if you have any questions or anything later, like I hope that there will be a little bit of an exchange in between us. You can just post your questions in the chat. And the thing is also, like, I would like to point out that I speak of my very personal experience. It's something that I'm not generalizing for anyone, but it's basically just kind of like trying to share my own story, tell you how I actually made it to overcome certain barriers in my life, and also how to kind of like, challenge stereotypical ideas and norms that we have in life that are just very much annoying. So for telling you a little bit about who I am, I would like to go back about like 10 years or something. Like back 10 years ago, I was still in a phase of a lot of doubt, like serious self-doubt. That was kind of like, the result of many years of grown-ups in my life telling me, you can't do this. Whoever you are, you're not enough. You don't fit in. Everything, like all the time being questioned. Because like when I was a little kid, um, I grew up in the southern part of Germany near Stuttgart, which was like a tiny little town. It was still like it was not a tiny village, but it was already a town, but it was still, like in the middle of the countryside. And my parents always worked a lot, and I spent most of my time with my godmother and her family. And this was like a true Swabian traditional family. But the thing is, it was a really welcoming and beautiful experience that I had with them, although they had like all these traditional ideas. But like I'll get back to that a little bit later. And when I was in kindergarten, I was always considered as a kid with a lot of fantasies, and I always told stories. I was known for telling, all these little stories, and that was kind of like my way of building my own little world where I am comfortable, where I can feel that I'm good enough the way I am. Because already when I was a little kid, I was questioned for how I presented, because I remember that because I have a 4-year-old brother, a brother who's 4 years older than I am. And I saw, I was female assigned at birth. I was born a girl. And I saw that people were treating me differently. They treated me differently than my brother, and I never understood why. At some point I saw, oh, okay, there's a physical difference. In my head, I thought like, okay, because he has this thing between his legs, he's 4 years older. So if I grow older, this is going to grow on me as well. And then people will also treat me the same way he's been treated. That this is not the way how it works. I eventually figured out. But that was obviously a huge disappointment for me. And the thing is also that the way how I learned this and how I had to accept who I was very difficult and very challenging for me. Because again, like, although I understood I'm not going to be like my brother in my life, that's what I thought back then, I tried to fit in, and I failed. Like I can remember so many moments when I really tried hard to fulfill the needs of the people around me were trying to request from me, and I just failed. And I also thought, okay, like dating men or like boys, like everyone was like, oh, who are you into? Which boy do you like? And I was like, I don't know. And I came out like when I was 13, because I figured out, okay, it doesn't work for me with men. So if thinking in this binary system, if I'm not into men, I must be into girls. I'm a lesbian. So I came out at 13 as a queer girl, as a lesbian. And that was something, that was very much difficult. Also, like seeing in my school, I was bullied a lot already before, quite like already in kindergarten, because the way I presented, more like a butch dyke masculine appearance that didn't fit with people. I wasn't a typical girl, so people picked on me. And I also remember that because of my brother, he was a little troublemaker. All the teachers in school knew, oh, you're the sibling of that person, so you can't be any good. So no one believed in me, and no one actually ever gave me a chance. And after 8th grade, I changed schools because like I felt like, okay, I can't stand this bullying anymore, and I can't stand this situation with like these teachers anymore. And I took the initiative to go to the school like in like 2 towns further, which was a little bit of a bigger town, still a town, like still not a big huge city, but it was already better over there. And it was the first time that I felt like, okay, it's somewhat that I'm more or less accepted. I was still among the group of like the freaks, or like kind of like the people who were kind of like not considered the cool kids, but I at least had a group of people. And also over there we had a lesbian teacher, and which was also something that I, admired. At the same time, I was also like really weirded out because the way how everyone else in school talked about this lesbian teacher was always in a negative way. And then I also thought like, okay, if this is what we grow into, like queer people, like if this is how people about us, like talk about us when we're grown-ups, this is really this is a problem. So I think a lot of people can relate to that, growing up as a queer person. Like if you're part of the LGBT community, you probably can relate to such experiences from your past. And this is something that we inherit, or like not inherit, but like this, what we kind of internalize in a way, that people always tell us the way we are is not right. And obviously also for me, even if I thought that I'm a lesbian woman, there was something still aching in me the whole time that I didn't know how to deal with it. And then besides that, all the teachers told me like, listen, you can't do this. Like my math teacher, he always told me like, whatever you do, you can't do it anyways, like whatever you can try, but you will fail, like he told me. And also my English teacher told me in my final grade, like she told me when I was 18 years old, she told me, you will never be able to hold on a conversation in English. And here I am today giving like a short presentation about my experiences in English, in like proper English. I still make some mistakes here and there, but I can speak, and I can communicate in that language pretty well. And I would have never believed back then when I finished school that I actually would finish school, that I actually managed to do that. And that I eventually get to a point in my life where I can be proud of myself achieved. And when I finished school, like I packed my bags from this tiny little Swabian town in southern Germany and went to Berlin. And this was probably my best decision or the best decision that I could take at that point, because like it gave me opportunities and like to see perspectives that I would have never seen back then. And although I was admitted to some weird study programs, I could have gone to university, but I decided, because from what I've learned in school, I'm not as smart as other people are. I'm not, good enough to go to university. I started a carpentry training. Like I did a 3-year carpentry school to learn how to build furniture. Which was a great experience in terms of like working in like artistic way, because I love working with wood and I like, like visualizing things and then building them. But it was like also for me on a personal level, more or less going through hell, because it was also the time when I actually figured out that I'm trans. So halfway through my carpentry training, I noticed, or like I realized, I'm not a woman. And it was kind of like this limbo, because I had one gay colleague who was awesome, who I really got along well with, but there was also like this really Nazi bully from hell, like someone who really like expressed open racist bullshit the whole time, was always picking on me, because I also back then was the woman in a area of work for predominantly for men. And but yeah, anyways, like we don't need to go too deep into that, but it was a really like I'm happy that I finished it, this training, but at the same time it was also like probably 3 of the most challenging years of my life. And I remember, it was in June 2009 that I was out with friends on a dance floor, and I broke down in tears, like in the middle of the dance floor. And a friend came up to me and was like, "Hey, what happened? What's going on? What's the deal?" And I told her back then, like, I'm not a woman. Like, this is something that I realized, it was in my head. Okay, this is what I have. What's evident. Like, I'm not a woman, and there's something I need to change. There's something that needs to happen, but I didn't know what should happen. And it was like the most freeing situation, or like the most freeing, I felt never as free as in that moment when I expressed that. But at the same time, I was never afraid, like as much in my life, at the same time, because it's, it's like there was so much uncertainty coming up, not knowing where I would go, what would happen. But at the same time, like all these like floating puzzle pieces all of a sudden made sense, because there were like already the years before so many little points in my life that was like that were pointing in that direction, but I didn't see it because I didn't have the knowledge about it. I didn't have the language or the words to describe who I am. They're still difficult for me today to describe who I am. But that's also what I thought back then. If I'm not a woman, so I must be a man. And then, and I even started saying that about myself. I went to people and said, like, I'm a man. And I felt like something is odd, something is really weird. And like, and at the same time, like it felt almost as wrong as me saying I'm a woman. And then I started saying, okay, I'm a trans man. And I was like, okay, this is still not fitting. There's still something. And I was like, again, looking for myself or searching for something, how I can describe myself. And, I also went then, because I thought it's part of the package of being trans. I went through legal gender recognition. And I don't know if you're aware that in Germany, we have to go through a really, really humiliating process that involves like a court case and two complete strangers who need to do psychological assessments with you to prove whether or not you are who you telling them you are. And I knew about myself who I am, and I made that decision for my life. But there were like three people in this whole process who had to prove my personal decision, and that was a really frustrating and bad process, humiliating process, as I said. And at the end of this process, like at the end of my legal gender recognition, I had my ID with my name Max on it, and I changed the gender marker from female to male. But I was also left with a burnout. Like it was a really terrible time, and I never want to get back to the point where I was in that moment. And the thing is, I don't want to be bragging about what I've already achieved in my life and to show you like what we can do. It's a little bit of a way that how I grew up. Like all the grown-ups, not all the grown-ups, but like many grown-ups in my life told me, you're not enough, you're not good. And even friends or like peers of my age, like in my age, told me, you're not right the way you are. And like we internalize that so much, and we think so little of us, and we think so, or like we often think so little of us in a way that we really give in to these thoughts. And I mean, I remember that there was like a really game changing point for me about like 3 years ago, when I it was like an application that I filled out for a UN program, and they asked me about my gender identity, and I wrote down, and I wrote like usually I would write trans man, but then I was like, no, I was sitting over this question for 2 hours. I was sitting there, and I ended up writing female assigned at birth, gender conforming trans person. Like longest gender identity that you can probably fill out in something like this. And but it felt so much better. It felt so much better to me that I was like, should I write something that people expect me to write there? Why can't I just write whatever, how I feel? And like trying to fit this definition of a man or a woman, like realizing that there's also so much more, and I can still, even if I now identify as non-binary, trans masculine, feeling somewhere comfortable on the male spectrum, but I'm not a man. I'm much more than just a man. And that is something for me that I feel like also having realized that even as a non-binary person, I can still like my masculine appearance. Non-binary people don't have to look androgynous. That's what I thought, and this is also what I believed all this time. But then I was like, no, I can just do whatever I want. I can, if I free myself from these expectations of people around me and just be like, listen, if it doesn't feel right to me, who am I doing this for? Who am I? Like, why should I tell that I'm a man or a trans man if it doesn't feel right for me? I know that this is also like something, this is a hurdle to overcome. It's something that we need to learn to stand up for ourselves, because I've as a queer person, but also as a female socialized person, I've never learned that. I've never learned to stand up against especially back then when you were a kid, against a grown up, to tell them, no, actually you're wrong. Like, I feel, if it feels right to me, that's okay. I don't have to believe you. And if I would have loved to have a grown up in my life who would tell me that. And I tell that to my 3.5-year-old daughter now. If there is something that doesn't feel right to you, it is okay to say no. It is okay to do something else. And I'm trying to really give this to her like all the time, in order for her to learn that, that she can, like, however, like, if it makes her feel comfortable, she can do whatever she wants if she doesn't hurt anyone else with that. And this is something, that I would like to share also with, like, or what I do with sharing my personal story. And like now, seeing where I am today, that I, now doing my PhD at the Charité in Berlin, which is like one of the most prestigious medical institutions worldwide, that I'm a, renowned specialist in HIV prevention, that I work for an international NGO. I give counsel and advice to the World Health Organization, to UNAIDS, big pharma companies, and research projects and so on. That people really want my knowledge today. That is something that I would have never guessed or believed that I would get there one day. And also that, I was just elected Mr. Gay Germany, and I'm a known trans advocate and community leader. And this is something where I always also thought, oh, how did that happen to me? I must be like, I'm so lucky. Like, it's just pure luck that this happens. It's just a coincidence, because it doesn't feel, or it didn't feel right for me to say like, no, I'm proud of what this is because I worked for it. And this is something where we also need to change sometimes the narrative of how we, as as LGBT people, how we can actually, celebrate us as people, because we're belittled so many times that people tell us, you're wrong, you're not enough, whatever it is, that it's hard for us ourselves to embrace and to celebrate what we achieve. And this is something that I would like to encourage you. Like, if you're part of the rainbow family, do this more often. Celebrate yourself, celebrate your achievements, and just tell other people, like, sometimes just tell them, no, I don't want this because something else feels right for me. And this is something that as I said, that I'd like to encourage you to do much more. And also, like, this idea of that, I thought back then, I often thought, oh, I wish I was normal, I wish I was like everyone else. Like, today I'm just like, oh my God, thank God that I'm not. Thank God that I'm, that I'm who I am, that this is like that I breaking free from these normative patterns, that this is a gift for me, that I realized that this is something that can actually bring potential and bring perspective. It brings you uniqueness, and it brings you options, and most importantly, it brings and this is something that I realized over the past few years. And I really hope that this is something that other people can also, get into, in terms of like embracing themselves for who they are, because we can be, sorry for my language, fucking proud of ourselves. Because whatever we do, we always have to prove it double, more or less. And this is also thinking about, like, if there's people working, for example, in HR, like employing LGBT people, like, whatever we achieve in our lives, like, we have to fight double for it compared to the mainstream society. So this is like something, like, we bring like some sort of like a drive with us that not many people have. We also bring perspectives with us, that not many people have. And this is like a really true gift. And like, whatever, like, if you're part of the queer community, or like the LGBT community, the rainbow community, frame it as however you want, you deserve the world. You are enough, you are perfect the way you are, and you can be really, really proud of yourself for being you. And I would just like to encourage you to not let any single other person on this planet tell you ever something else, because we can determine our own paths. And it is important for us to change the narrative, how we talk about ourselves, but also then how the community out there, or like, not the community, but like bigger society, talks about us. And I hope that this is something that there's something that you could take away from this today, from my personal story.